I would highly recommend thinking about social connections as sort of a metaphor or as being analogous to the connections in an ecosystem. When you have a diverse number of connections in an ecosystem, then water starts cycling, right? Then nutrients start cycling, and the whole system becomes a net, and it captures more nutrients than it gives off. And over time, what that allows it to do is move to the next stage in succession and build and increase and become more stable and more resilient over time. I think that there's analogous things happening socially. You know, if you think about that weed growing out of a crack in the pavement, you know, that is the lone nut who wants to start a new project. And it could just as well be pulled out and that's it. But if that weed can build a little bit of edge and can accumulate a little bit of dust and a little bit of soil and maybe another seed and a little bit of water and grow that second weed, then you're sort of twice as resilient as you were before. And over time, just as a forest will move from, you know, a vacant parking lot will turn into a forest over time, with the right social connections, you can turn sort of that lone nut into a movement that's more stable and more resilient. So I really I've come to believe that the same patterns and principles that are happening in the one are also happening in the other. I do believe that there is a social aspect to ecological design, and that's something really worth exploring. You know, what does, in a permaculture design, you could say a swale harvests water. What does a social swale look like? I'm not 100% sure, but I think that there's some really interesting things to pursue and to explore there. And then the same thing goes with education. So now you're not dealing with necessarily social connections, but curricular connections. And so how can we create a project that has as many curricular connections as possible? They're all meaningful, and it's tying the students' understanding into a sort of a different context and allowing to learn them in a little bit of a different way. You know, a project like an urban agriculture project in a school is, you know, you're going to need that one or two teachers to kind of champion the project. But if you can go to other teachers and say, hey, would you be interested in getting involved in this? Take a look here. I think it fits into the curriculum that you're teaching, you know, in this way. It hits these learner outcomes. We can do an assessment that fits with this. And so those teachers come on board. And then there's a student club. And so the student club becomes sort of a fun thing you do at lunch after school. And that club kind of continues to grow as they pull in other students. And so you have your own class, you have those champion teachers, you bring those other teachers in, you want to bring as many different teachers and departments in as possible. And then there's this other aspect that kind of goes beyond the school, where it's really about how do we now, so if we can integrate this within the school, how do we now integrate this between schools or between the school and the larger community. And so one of the things that we're trying to do is partner with community organizations. Just this last weekend, to start the installation of this food forest here, we had a class of adults that are taking a permaculture design certificate come in, and so they came in. It was 30 of them. We had about 15 students, and so all 45 of us spent Saturday from 9 until 5 working on what's behind us here. And so that brings in another sort of dimension. If permaculture or if ecology dictates that the more connected a system is, the more stable and resilient it is, I think you could say the same thing about the social connections of any program. You know, if it's just one person, if it's just myself running around doing this, then if I'm gone, you know, that's it, it's gone. But if you can get as many different students and departments and teachers and schools and community groups involved in it as possible, then it builds that resiliency. So for me, the social aspect of a project like this within a school is just a mirror of those same design principles that are being used in the creation of something like a food forest. So it's kind of an extension of that. What I find really interesting about ecology is it's a network. And so anytime you have the sharing of resources, it's a network. And well, social networks are the same thing. And so, we have within the food forest, we're going to have the sharing of water and nutrients and energy to a lesser extent. But socially, especially in a school, we're going to have learner outcomes. We're going to have ideas flowing through here. We're going to have actual physical material moving through the school as it goes to the culinary arts program. And so it's a similar thing, but in a slightly different sort of context.